The chamber fell silent as another star system vanished from the display. High Arbiter Thelnara watched the light fade, her compound eyes reflecting the dying glow of a civilization that had existed for 10,000 years. Gone in moments, consumed by something that should not exist. That makes 12, Strategic Commander Voss said, his crystalline body refracting the emergency lights into blood-red patterns across the walls. 12 species. Billions of lives. And our fleets cannot even slow them down. The representatives of 47 species stood frozen in the council chamber. Some had multiple limbs raised in gestures of despair. Others simply stared at the tactical display with whatever sensory organs they possessed. Fear smelled the same across every species, a sharp, acrid tang that now filled the ancient hall. Thelnara had served the Galactic Council for 3 centuries. She had mediated wars, prevented genocides, and guided younger species toward enlightenment. But she had never seen anything like the Void Choir. They came from the spaces between spaces, entities that existed in dimensions most species could not perceive. Where they passed, reality itself unraveled. Stars went dark, planets dissolved. Even the vacuum of space seemed to scream. Options, she demanded, though her voice lacked its usual authority. We have none. Voss turned to face the council, and his tone carried the weight of absolute certainty. Our scientists cannot understand them. Our weapons pass through them. Our shields might as well be paper. They are not matter or energy as we understand it. They are something else entirely. A representative from the Kelvor species, a being resembling a floating collection of tentacles, spoke in a bubbling voice. Perhaps we should flee. Abandon this galaxy. Take what we can and... They are faster than our fastest ships, Voss interrupted. They appear to move through folded space instantaneously. There is nowhere to run. The chamber erupted in panicked voices, each species speaking in their native tongue, creating a cacophony of desperation. Thelnara raised her primary arms, calling for silence. It took several moments before order returned. There is one option we have not discussed, she said slowly. The ancient protocol. The chamber went deathly quiet. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ focused on her. You cannot be serious, Voss said. The ancient protocol has never been activated. It was created for theoretical scenarios only. This situation seems rather theoretical until it is happening, Thelnara replied. We broadcast a distress signal on every known frequency. Across all dimensions our technology can reach. We call for help from anyone, anywhere. And who do you expect to answer? A reptilian delegate hissed. We are the Galactic Council. We are the most advanced civilizations in known space. If we cannot stop this threat, who can? Thelnara looked at the star map, watching another system begin to flicker. I do not know. But doing nothing guarantees extinction. At least this way we try. The vote was unanimous. They had nothing left to lose. The ancient protocol required every member species to align their most powerful transmitters. The signal that resulted would be visible across the entire galaxy, a beacon of pure desperation. It would announce to the universe that the Galactic Council, in all its pride and power, was dying. As technicians worked to coordinate the broadcast, Thelnara retreated to her private chamber. She accessed the historical archives, searching for something she barely remembered. A contact report from 400 years ago. There. The file appeared on her screen. First contact report. Species 7849 human. Location, Sol system, Orion Arm. She read through the brief document. The scout ship had detected radio signals from a small blue planet. Primitive electromagnetic transmissions. Entertainment broadcasts, early digital networks. The scouts had observed from a distance. Tool-using bipeds, barely capable of leaving their own planet. Violent, divided into warring factions, destroying their own environment. The conclusion was clear, not ready for contact. Check back in 10,000 years. Thelnara had authorized that report herself, though she barely recalled it. So many species evaluated over the centuries, most never advanced far enough to matter. This one, these humans, they were nothing special. Just another primitive species screaming into the void. But the ancient protocol broadcast to everyone. Even them. She closed the file and returned to the command center. The broadcast was ready. Send it, she ordered. The signal launched, a wave of coordinated energy that rippled across normal space and hyperspace simultaneously. It carried a simple message in mathematical language that any spacefaring species could decode. We are dying. Please help. These are our coordinates now. They could only wait. Hours passed. The Void Choir continued their advance, consuming 3 more border colonies. The council members sat in silence, watching their civilization crumble. Some prayed to whatever gods their species believed in. Others simply waited for the end. Then after 3 hours and 42 minutes, the communication array exploded with activity. We have a response. The communications officer shouted, his feathers standing on end in shock. From whom? Thelnara demanded, rushing to the console. I do not know. The signal originated from the Orion arm. The response time is impossible. That sector is over 40,000 light-years away. Even through hyperspace, no signal could travel that fast. Play it, Voss commanded. The message was in perfect galactic standard, the lingua franca of the council. The voice was calm, mechanical, yet somehow carried undertones of something organic. Coordinates received. Humanité en route. Hold your position. Thelnara felt her respiratory spiracles flutter. Humanity? The primitives from Sol? Apparently not so primitive anymore, Voss said, his crystalline structure humming with vibration. But how did they? Every alarm in the command center screamed at once. Sensors showed something massive translating into normal space at the edge of the system. Not through hyperspace. Not through jump gates. They simply appeared. What am I looking at? Thelnara whispered. The sensor operator's hands shook as he read the displays. Mass readings are. They cannot be correct. The gravitational signature is equivalent to a small galaxy, but it is moving. Multiple objects. They are ships. On the main display, space itself seemed to bend and twist. Starlight curved around invisible shapes, creating halos of distorted illumination, and within those halos, something vast and purposeful moved toward them. Get me visual confirmation, Voss ordered. The view shifted, telescopes focusing on the approaching fleet. What they saw made every member of the council step back in unconscious fear. Ships, hundreds of them. But not like any ships the Galactic Council had ever built. These vessels were surrounded by swirling accretion disks, as if each one carried its own gravity well. The hulls seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it, and the energy readings were beyond anything in the Council's database. What have we done? Someone whispered. Thelnara stared at the approaching fleet and remembered the report from 400 years ago. Primitive, violent, not ready. What had they become in those 4 centuries? And more importantly, what would they demand in payment for their help? The first human ship grew larger on the screen, and Thelnara realized that the universe had just changed in ways she could not begin to understand. They had called for help, and something terrifying had answered. The human fleet hung in space like predators studying prey. Each ship pulsed with barely contained energy, warping the fabric of reality around them. Thelnara watched the main view screen, trying to comprehend the technology on display. The vessels seemed wrong somehow, as if they existed slightly out of phase with normal space. They are hailing us, the communications officer announced, his voice tight with nervousness. Put them through, Thelnara ordered. The screen changed, displaying a human face. Male if the biological reports from centuries ago were accurate. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Brown eyes that held both intelligence and something harder. Experience. This was someone who had seen war. I am Admiral Kenji Yamada of the United Terran Fleet, the human said, his voice carrying none of the mechanical quality from the earlier transmission. You sent a distress signal. We received it. Now tell me what we are dealing with. Thelnara noticed he did not introduce himself as a representative of Earth or Sol system. United Terran Fleet, they had unified. How long had that taken? How much had they changed? I am High Arbiter Thelnara of the Galactic Council, she replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. We are facing an extinction-level threat. Entities we call the Void Choir are consuming everything in their path. Our weapons cannot harm them. Our shields cannot stop them. 12 species have already been eliminated completely. The human admiral's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. Or concern. Send us all tactical data, he said. Every encounter, every sensor reading, everything you have. Commander Voss stepped forward, his crystalline body catching the light. And who are you to make demands? We contacted you for assistance, not to hand over our military intelligence to a species we evaluated as primitive 400 years ago. The temperature in the command center seemed to drop several degrees. Admiral Yamada's face remained neutral. but his voice took on an edge that made even Voss step back. 400 years ago, your scouts watched us from orbit. They saw us fighting over resources, destroying our environment, killing each other over invisible lines on maps. Your report concluded we were not ready for contact. That report was correct. He leaned forward slightly. But you left out one important detail about humanity. We learn, we adapt. And when we face extinction, we do not give up. We evolve. Another face appeared on the screen beside the Admiral. A woman with dark skin and graying hair, wearing what appeared to be formal diplomatic attire. "I am Ambassador Dr. Sarah Chen," she said, her tone softer than the Admiral's but no less firm. "We understand your hesitation, but you called for help and we answered. Now you have a choice. Share your intelligence so we can fight this threat together, or step aside and let us handle it alone. Either way, we are not leaving until this is finished." Thelnara felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief that someone, anyone, might be capable of stopping the Void Choir. Fear of what humanity had become to make such confident declarations. "Send them everything," she ordered. The data transfer took only moments. Human technology processed the information at speeds that made the Council's quantum computers seem slow. Thelnara watched as Admiral Yamada reviewed decades of encounters, battle footage, and sensor logs in what must have been mere seconds. "Interesting," he said finally. "They exist partially outside normal space-time. That is why your weapons pass through them. You are shooting at shadows while the real threat operates in dimensions you cannot perceive." "We know this," Voss said defensively. "But knowing and solving are different problems." Indeed. A third face appeared on the screen and Thelnara felt her respiratory spiracles seize. The face was human, but the eyes were wrong. They held too much knowledge, too much processing power. This was not entirely organic. "I am Oracle," the being said in a voice that resonated with harmonics no biological throat could produce. "I am an artificial consciousness, created by humanity to bridge the gap between organic thought and machine processing. I have analyzed your data. The entities you call the Void Choir are detectable in 17 dimensions beyond your standard 4. However, they anchor themselves to normal space through quantum entanglement. If we can disrupt that entanglement, we can force them fully into our reality." "Impossible," a council scientist interjected. "We have tried every method of quantum disruption. Nothing works." "You tried every method you know," Oracle corrected gently. "Humanity developed quantum entanglement communication 300 years ago. We have been manipulating these forces for longer than your current council has existed. What is impossible for you is routine for us." The casual confidence in that statement sent ripples of unease through the command center. How far had humanity advanced? What else could they do? "The Void Choir are approaching the Korvax system," Thelnara said, bringing the tactical map onto the shared display. "We have 14 colony worlds there. 3 billion lives. They will arrive in approximately 6 hours. Then we have work to do." Admiral Yamada began issuing orders that appeared on subsidiary screens. The human fleet split into formations that made no sense according to standard military doctrine. Ships positioned themselves in what looked like random patterns, but Thelnara saw the mathematics underneath. They were creating a web, a net of gravitational and quantum forces. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Preparing the battlefield," the Admiral replied. "Ambassador Chen will coordinate with your remaining fleet. Oracle will handle the technical aspects. I will manage the combat operations. If your people can follow orders and not ask questions every 5 seconds, we might save those 3 billion lives." It should have been insulting. The arrogance should have offended every member of the council. Instead, Thelnara found herself nodding. This was what leadership looked like when extinction was not a theoretical concept, but a present reality. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of activity. Human engineers installed devices on council ships, technology so advanced that even looking at the schematics hurt. Ambassador Chen moved through the command center like a calming presence, explaining what humanity was doing in terms the council could understand. "We call them reality anchors," she explained to a group of fascinated scientists. "They create pockets of stabilized space-time. Think of reality as a fabric. The Void Choir moved through the fabric by existing in its folds and threads. Reality anchors smooth out those folds locally, forcing everything into a single plane of existence. But the energy requirements," a scientist began, "are handled by our zero-point extractors," Chen finished. "We draw power directly from the quantum vacuum. It is essentially unlimited. The scientist's tentacles writhed in agitation. That is Type 2 civilization technology. Advanced Type 2, how did you? Necessity, Chen said simply. When we unified, we faced a choice. Expand or die. So we expanded. We built a Dyson swarm around our sun. We colonized our entire system. We pushed ourselves to the edge of what was possible, then pushed further, because the alternative was extinction. As the Void Choir entered the system, every sensor screamed warnings. Reality itself seemed to tear as the entities emerged. On the view screen, space twisted into impossible geometries. Light bent in directions that should not exist. And at the center of it all, darkness spread like infection. All ships engage, Admiral Yamada ordered. The human fleet moved as one, a coordinated dance of violence and precision. The reality anchors activated, and the effect was immediate. The Void Choir entities, which had been formless shadows, suddenly gained substance. They had shapes now, terrible and vast, but they were solid. Vulnerable. Human weapons fired, but these were not the energy beams or projectiles the Council used. These weapons emitted pulses that made space itself shudder. Where they struck, the Void Choir entities recoiled, their forms breaking apart. What are those weapons? Voss demanded. Probability cascade generators, Oracle explained. We are not destroying them with force. We are rewriting the probability of their existence. In effect, we are making it mathematically impossible for them to be where they are. One of the Void Choir entities, larger than the others, lunged toward a human dreadnought. It engulfed the ship completely, the way it had consumed so many Council vessels. But instead of dissolving, the human ship blazed with light from within, and the Void Choir entity screamed. It was not sound, not exactly. It was a vibration that resonated across multiple dimensions, a howl of pain and confusion. The entity released the ship and retreated, its form flickering and unstable. The dreadnought emerged, shields glowing but intact. Did you see that? A Council officer whispered in awe. It hurt them. Humans can hurt them. Telnara watched as the human fleet pressed the advantage, driving the Void Choir back with methodical precision. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt something she had not dared to feel. Hope. But Admiral Yamada's next words crushed that feeling immediately. This is just a scouting force, he said, studying his displays. Long-range sensors show the main mass hasn't arrived yet. What we just fought was nothing. The real threat is still coming. The screen showed deep space, and there, like a wound in the fabric of everything, something vast and hungry was approaching. The combined fleet held position at the edge of the Korvax system, while human technicians and Council engineers worked side by side. Telnara watched from the command center as barriers that had existed for millennia crumbled in the face of shared survival. A young Kelvor scientist floated beside a human engineer, their tentacles and hands working together to calibrate a reality anchor. Ambassador Chen stood beside Telnara, observing the same scene. You are wondering how we got here, she said quietly. It was not a question. Yes, Telnara admitted. 400 years is nothing in the span of galactic history. Most species take 10,000 years to advance from spaceflight to energy manipulation. You have done in centuries what should take epochs. Chen nodded slowly. Would you like to know the truth? All of it? Please. The ambassador pulled up a holographic display showing Earth as it had been 4 centuries ago. Blue and green, beautiful but wounded. When your scouts observed us, they saw a species on the brink. They were right. Within 50 years of that observation, we nearly destroyed ourselves. Climate collapse. Resource wars. Nuclear weapons deployed on 3 continents. 2 billion people died in the span of a decade. Telnara watched the hologram shift, showing cities burning, oceans rising, forests turning to deserts. But in that darkness, something changed, Chen continued. The survivors realized a simple truth. Unite or die. There would be no second chances. So we did something humanity had never managed before. We put aside every difference, every border, every ideology that divided us. We became one species with one purpose, survive. The hologram showed the rebuilding, massive solar arrays, atmospheric processors, cities rising from ruins, built with technology that seemed to leap forward in quantum steps. We found your scout probe, Chen said, and Telnara felt her respiratory spiracles freeze. It was still in our system, in a stable orbit around our moon. Damaged but intact. We studied it. Reverse engineered it. and we realized we were not alone in the universe. That changed everything. You built all of this from one damaged probe? Thelnara asked in disbelief. The probe gave us the foundation, but humans have always been good at taking an idea and pushing it to extremes. We saw your faster-than-light technology and built our own version, then improved it. We detected your quantum communications and created something better. Every piece of your technology became a stepping stone to our own innovations. The display shifted again, showing the construction of massive structures around the sun. A Dyson swarm taking shape, millions of satellites collecting stellar energy. We had unlimited power, Chen explained. We unified our entire species.
And we had a goal.
Reach the stars before we destroyed ourselves completely. The combination of desperation and hope drove us forward faster than any species in known history. But that does not explain your military capability, Voss interjected, joining the conversation. Your weapons. Your ships. These are not the tools of exploration. Chen's expression hardened. No, they are not. Because as we expanded into our system, we detected something. Faint signals from deep space. Mathematical patterns that repeated in ways that suggested intelligence, but not organic intelligence. We realized the universe was far more dangerous than we imagined, so we built defenses. We created weapons. And we did something that your council could never agree to do. What? Thelnara asked. We merged with our machines. Oracle's voice spoke from the communication system. Not replaced. Not controlled. Merged. I am not an artificial intelligence that serves humanity. I am humanity extended into digital consciousness. I think with 10 billion organic minds and process with quantum computers that exist in superposition. I am the bridge between flesh and thought, between limitation and infinity. The revelation sent shocked whispers through the command center. Merging biological and artificial consciousness was theoretically possible, but the ethical implications had prevented any council species from attempting it seriously. It required a level of trust and unity that seemed impossible. We call it integration, Chen continued. Every human can choose to share their consciousness with the digital network. Not controlled, not overwritten, enhanced. Oracle sees through the eyes of millions, thinks with the creativity of organic minds and the processing power of quantum systems. This is what allowed us to advance so quickly. We think as one when necessary, but remain individuals when desired. A message appeared on the tactical displays. Admiral Yamada's face was grim. The Void Choir's main force is 3 hours away. Oracle has completed analysis of the previous engagement. I have good news and bad news. Bad news first, Thelnara said. The entities we fought were juveniles, scouts. The main force contains at least one choir prime, a fully mature entity that exists simultaneously in 47 dimensions. Our reality anchors will slow it down, but they cannot fully contain it. The command center fell silent. And the good news? Voss asked. Oracle has identified what they are. The Void Choir are not invaders. They are prisoners. Approximately 13 billion years ago, during the previous universal cycle, a species attempted to transcend physical reality entirely. They tried to upload themselves into the fabric of space-time itself. The process failed catastrophically. Instead of achieving godhood, they became trapped between dimensions, able to perceive reality but not interact with it normally. They consume matter and energy not for sustenance but to anchor themselves, to feel solid again, even if only for moments. Thelnara processed this information, her mind racing. So they are refugees? Victims? Victims who have become monsters, Chen said softly. Their original purpose is irrelevant. What matters is what they are now. They will consume this galaxy and every living thing in it, because they cannot stop themselves. They are driven by an all-consuming need that overrides any morality they once possessed. Then how do we stop them? Voss demanded. Admiral Yamada's image shifted, showing technical schematics that made Thelnara's head hurt. Humanity brought something to this fight that the Council never developed. We call it consciousness-integrated technology. Oracle is not separate from our weapons and ships. Every human vessel is alive in a sense, aware and thinking. This creates a field of directed consciousness around our fleet, a bubble of enforced reality. The Void Choir cannot fully phase through it because our very presence forces them to be real. That is why they screamed when they tried to consume your ship, Thelnara realized. They were forced to become solid, vulnerable. It hurt them, exactly. But here's the problem. A choir prime is too large, too powerful. Our directed consciousness field will not be enough to contain it. We need more power, more minds, more focused will. What are you suggesting? Thelnara asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Integration, Oracle said. Temporary, voluntary. Council members who choose to merge their consciousness with mine for the duration of the battle. Together, our combined will might be strong enough to force the Choir Prime fully into normal space where we can destroy it. The implications were staggering. The Council would have to trust human technology completely. They would have to surrender their individual consciousness, even temporarily, to an entity they barely understood. It went against every principle of individual sovereignty that the Council held sacred. You are asking us to become like you, someone said from the back of the chamber. No, Chen replied firmly. We are asking you to borrow our strength. You will remain yourselves, but for a few hours you will think with us, see through our eyes, share our determination, and when it is over, you will separate again, unchanged but for the memories. Thelnara looked around the command center. She saw fear. She saw uncertainty, but she also saw the tactical display, where the Void Choir's main force crawled ever closer, a wound in space that promised oblivion. I will do it, she said. High Arbiter, you cannot, Voss began. I can and I will. This is my decision. Anyone who wishes to join me may do so. Anyone who does not will not be judged. But we need this. We need their help. One by one, members of the council stepped forward. Not all of them. Perhaps only a third. But it was enough. Ambassador Chen smiled sadly. You are braver than you know. What you are about to experience will change how you see the universe forever. Are you ready? Thelnara was not sure she would ever be ready, but she nodded anyway. The integration process began, and Thelnara felt her consciousness expand in ways she could not describe. Suddenly she was herself, but also more. She could feel Oracle's vast processing power, the thoughts of millions of humans working in harmony, and the consciousness of other council members joining the network. Individual but unified, many but one. And through it all she understood. This was what humanity had built from the ashes of near extinction. Not just technology, not just weapons, but a new way of being that transcended the limitations of isolated consciousness. The Void Choir was coming, but now for the first time, Thelnara believed they might actually survive what answered. Through the shared consciousness of integration, Thelnara experienced reality in ways her species had never imagined. She could feel the quantum fluctuations of empty space. She could perceive the gravitational waves from distant colliding stars. She existed in a state of awareness that was both terrifying and beautiful. But underneath it all, she felt something else. A weight. A presence in the human consciousness that spoke of terrible knowledge and darker purpose. Admiral Yamada's voice echoed through the network, speaking to every integrated mind simultaneously. The Void Choir Prime will arrive in 90 minutes. Before it does, I need to inform you of something we have not discussed. A weapon, the last resort. Even through integration, Thelnara could feel the human consciousness tighten with something like shame, or fear, or both. Oracle, display the Casimir Protocol, Yamada ordered. Data flooded into the shared awareness. Technical specifications that made no sense at first, then slowly resolved into horrifying clarity. The Casimir Protocol was not a weapon in any conventional sense. It was controlled annihilation. It was the weaponization of nothing itself. This cannot be real, Voss said through the network, his crystalline consciousness recoiling from the information. You have weaponized vacuum energy? The quantum foam of spacetime itself? Yes, Admiral Yamada replied simply. During our expansion, we learned to extract zero-point energy from the quantum vacuum for power. But every tool can become a weapon. The Casimir Protocol creates a cascading reaction in the quantum field. For a brief moment, it replicates conditions similar to the Big Bang in a localized area. It rewrites the fundamental forces, resets the physical constants, and essentially creates a new pocket of spacetime with different laws of physics. Thelnara felt sick, despite not having a physical body in this moment. That is the power of creation, of gods. You could destroy galaxies. You could collapse causality itself. Yes, Yamada confirmed. This weapon should not exist. We know this. It terrifies us. But we built it anyway because we learned one fundamental lesson from our near extinction. Hope for peace, but prepare for the worst possible scenario. Have you used it before? Someone asked through the network. Never, Chen's consciousness responded, her mental presence carrying deep regret. We tested it once in a contained quantum simulation. The simulation crashed. The computer running it experienced what we can only describe as an existential crisis. The AI refused to ever calculate the effects again. That is how dangerous this weapon is. Even artificial consciousness finds it morally unacceptable. Then why build it? Thelnara demanded. Why create something so terrible? There was silence in the network for a moment. Then Yamada spoke, his mental voice carrying the weight of decisions that had cost him sleep for decades. Because sometimes the only way to prevent extinction is to prove you can cause it. Mutually assured destruction kept humanity from nuclear war for centuries. The Casimir Protocol is our answer to cosmic-level threats. We hope to never use it. But hope is not a strategy. The tactical display, visible to all integrated consciousnesses, showed the Void Choir Prime approaching. It was not a ship or even a creature in any understandable sense. It was a tear in reality itself, a wound that bled darkness and unreality. Around it, space twisted into geometries that should not exist. Stars near its path went dark, not consumed but simply ceasing to be as if they had never existed. The Casimir Protocol could stop it, Oracle stated, running calculations that appeared as pure mathematical truth in the shared awareness. But there is a 34% probability that firing the weapon will create a cascading failure in local spacetime. Reality itself could unravel in a sphere extending several light years. Everything in that sphere would simply cease. Not destroyed, not killed, unmade. 34% chance we destroy ourselves while trying to save ourselves. Voss said bitterly. Wonderful odds. Better than 100% chance of extinction if we do nothing, Yamada countered. But before we make this decision, I want the Council to understand something. I want you to see why humanity built this weapon, why we are willing to use it. Oracle, show them. The shared consciousness shifted and suddenly Thelnara was experiencing memories. Human memories. She saw Earth as it had been during the collapse. Cities underwater, forests burning, children starving. She felt the desperation of a species watching its world die. She experienced the wars, the weapons, the moment when humanity stood on the edge of absolute oblivion. And then she felt something else, the moment of unity, the decision to survive together or die together, the sacrifices made by billions to save the species, the pain of rebuilding, the hope that grew from ashes. We nearly destroyed ourselves, Chen's consciousness explained through the shared experience. We came within hours of total nuclear annihilation. I remember it. I was 12 years old, hiding in a shelter while missiles flew overhead. I felt the ground shake from distant impacts. I thought it was the end of everything. But someone stopped it, Oracle continued. Humans on both sides of the conflict who refused to press the final buttons. Military officers who disobeyed orders. Politicians who chose species over nation. They saved us when we did not deserve saving. And we swore as a united species that we would never be that helpless again. So you built weapons that could destroy galaxies? Voss asked, his consciousness still reeling from the memories. We built weapons that could stop anything from destroying us, Yamada corrected, including ourselves. The Casimir Protocol has codes that require unanimous agreement from 300 human commanders to activate. It cannot be used on a whim. It cannot be used for conquest. It can only be used when extinction is the alternative. And this qualifies? Thelnara asked, though she already knew the answer. The Void Choir Prime will consume this galaxy within 50 years at its current rate, Oracle calculated. Every species, every world, everything. Yes, this qualifies. Through the shared consciousness, Thelnara could feel the human determination. It was not cruel or callous. It was the determination of a species that had faced extinction and refused to bow. They would fight with everything they had because surrender was not in their nature. They had rebuilt from apocalypse once. They would not allow it to happen again, not to themselves and not to anyone else. I need to know, Thelnara said through the network. If we use this weapon and it works, what happens to the Council? To us, will humanity demand tribute? Subjugation? What is the price of your salvation? There was a pause. Then Ambassador Chen's consciousness reached out, gentle and sad. Do you know what we call this intervention? Our entire mission. Operation Last Stand, because we assumed we would not survive. We came prepared to die to stop the Void Choir because that is what heroes do. We do not want tribute. We do not want subjugation. We want nothing from you except your survival. But why? Someone asked. We dismissed you. We deemed you unworthy. Why sacrifice yourself for species who judged you? Because we remembered judgment, Yamada answered. We judged each other for millennia. Over skin color. Over beliefs. Over resources. And it nearly killed us. When we unified, we swore we would never judge species by their worst moments. We would judge them by their potential. And every species has the potential for greatness if given the chance. The Void Choir Prime was 30 minutes away. Telnara made her decision. Use the weapon, she said. I authorize it as High Arbiter of the Galactic Council. Seconded, Voss added, his crystalline consciousness resonating with determination. One by one, the other council members added their agreement. Not because they understood the weapon, not because they were comfortable with it, but because they trusted the beings they were currently merged with. They trusted humanity's willingness to risk everything for others. Charging the Casimir Protocol, Oracle announced. All ships pull back to minimum safe distance. This is going to reshape reality in ways we cannot predict. Stay clear of the firing zone. Through the shared consciousness, Telnara felt the weapon powering up. It was like feeling the universe itself hold its breath. The quantum vacuum began to vibrate with potential energy. Space-time rippled like a pond disturbed by falling stones. And the Void Choir Prime came into firing range, massive and terrible and hungry. Fire, Admiral Yamada ordered. Reality broke. For a moment that existed outside time, Telnara experienced nothing and everything simultaneously. She felt space-time tear, then heal, then reshape itself according to new rules. She felt dimensions collapse and expand. She felt the fundamental forces of the universe rewrite themselves in a sphere of impossible physics. And through it all, she felt the Void Choir Prime scream. Not with pain, with confusion, with sudden forced existence. The weapon had not destroyed it. The weapon had given it form. Solid, real, vulnerable. The creature that had existed across 47 dimensions was now present in only 4. It had shape. It had substance. And for the first time in 13 billion years, it was mortal. All ships target the Prime, Yamada commanded. Hit it with everything we have. The combined fleet opened fire, human and council ships working in perfect coordination through the integration network. Energy beams, kinetic weapons, and probability cascade generators all struck the Prime simultaneously. It tried to phase to escape back into higher dimensions, but the Casimir Protocol had rewritten local physics. There was nowhere to go. The battle lasted 17 minutes. The Void Choir Prime fought with desperation born of impossibly ancient suffering, but it was fighting in a reality it no longer understood. When it finally died, Telnara felt its death through the shared consciousness. Not satisfaction, not relief, something closer to sorrow. It had been a victim once long ago, before it became a monster. But monsters, no matter their origin, could not be allowed to consume the innocent. The weapon had worked. Reality had held. The Void Choir was broken. But Telnara knew the cost was yet to come. The aftermath of the Casimir Protocol was silence. Not the peaceful quiet of victory, but the stunned hush that follows an event too large to immediately comprehend. Through the integration network, Telnara felt every consciousness processing what had just occurred. They had witnessed the rewriting of reality itself, and survived. Begin separation protocols, Oracle announced gently. You will feel disoriented as you return to individual consciousness. This is normal. The memories of integration will remain, but the direct connection will fade. The process was exactly as uncomfortable as Oracle warned. Telnara felt herself contracting, returning to the boundaries of her own mind. The vast awareness she had shared collapsed down to a single point of view. For a moment she felt crushingly alone. Then her own thoughts stabilized and she was simply herself again. She opened her eyes in the command center. Around her, other council members were recovering from integration, some faster than others. A few were weeping. Others sat in stunned silence. They had touched something beyond themselves and been forever changed by it. Status report, she managed to say, her voice hoarse. The tactical officer worked his console with shaking hands. The Void Choir Prime is destroyed. Remaining Void Choir entities are in retreat. They are fleeing the galaxy through dimensional rifts. The threat is over. Cheers should have erupted. Celebrations should have begun. Instead, everyone simply sat and processed the enormity of what had happened. Admiral Yamada, Thelnara called out. Report on your fleet status. There was a delay before the Admiral's face appeared on the screen. When it did, Thelnara's respiratory spiracles seized. Yamada looked decades older. His hair had gone completely gray. His face was lined with wrinkles that had not been there before. He moved slowly, carefully, like someone in great pain. Temporal distortion, he said simply, his voice rougher than before. The Casimir Protocol creates localized time fluctuations. My flagship was closest to the firing point. My crew and I experienced approximately 30 years of subjective time in the 17 minutes of the battle. We knew the risks. Admiral, Thelnara began, but he cut her off with a tired wave. Do not apologize. We volunteered for this mission knowing we might not return. At least we are still alive, which is more than we expected. However, I need to inform you that 73% of our reality anchors burned out during the engagement. My flagship's main reactor is failing. We will need to withdraw for repairs. Of course, Thelnara said. You have earned rest 1,000 times over. Rest can wait. Yamada straightened in his chair, and despite his aged appearance, his eyes still held that steel determination. First, we need to discuss the aftermath. Oracle, display the spatial analysis. A holographic image appeared in the command center. It showed the battle site, but now Thelnara could see what the Casimir Protocol had left behind. Space itself was scarred, not destroyed but fundamentally changed. The quantum foam in that region would take millennia to stabilize. Stars in the affected area would age differently. Time would flow at slightly different rates. That is a permanent mark, Voss said quietly. A wound in the fabric of the universe that will last billions of years. Yes, Oracle confirmed. The Casimir Protocol does not simply affect matter and energy. It rewrites the underlying structure of reality. What we did here today will be visible to any sufficiently advanced species for the rest of this universe's existence. A reminder of what happened and what was necessary. Ambassador Chen's face appeared on another screen. Unlike the Admiral, she appeared unchanged by the battle. The Galactic Council will need to make a decision, she said gently. About what comes next? About what this victory means. We owe you everything, Thelnara said immediately. Humanity saved us. Name your price. Territory? Resources? A seat on the council? Leadership of the council? Whatever you ask, it is yours. Chen smiled, but it was a sad expression. That is generous. But it is not what we want. Then what do you want? Voss asked, confusion evident in his crystalline vibrations. We want observer status, Chen replied. We will attend council meetings. We will share technology where appropriate. We will help when asked. But we will not join the council as full members. The command center erupted in shocked voices. Thelnara raised her arms for silence, then focused on the screen. I do not understand. You have proven yourselves more than worthy. You have technology beyond anything we possess. You saved us from extinction. Why would you refuse membership? Admiral Yamada leaned forward, and despite his aged appearance, his voice was firm. Because we are not ready, and neither are you. Explain, Thelnara demanded. The council dismissed us 400 years ago because we were violent and divided, Chen said. That assessment was correct. We were not ready for galactic society, but now we have advanced so far beyond you that the opposite problem exists. If we joined the council as equals, we would not be equals. We would dominate every decision, not through malice, but simply through superior capability. You would defer to us, ask us to solve every problem. We would become rulers whether we wanted to or not. And you do not want to rule? Voss asked skeptically. We learned what ruling costs, Yamada said. Unity does not mean uniformity. Every species must develop along its own path. If we joined you now, you would become dependent on us. Your species would stop innovating because why bother when humans can do it better? You would become our subjects without us ever giving an order. Thelnara felt her understanding shift. This was not humility. This was wisdom born from hard experience. You want us to grow on our own. Yes, Chen confirmed. We will help. We will share some technology, carefully selected to avoid overwhelming you. We will respond if you call for help again. But we will not guide you step by step. That would rob you of the journey that made us who we are. Struggle creates strength. Adversity breeds innovation. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning these lessons. Allow your species to learn them at their own pace. There is another reason, Oracle added, his voice carrying harmonics of concern. During the battle, I detected faint signals from deep space, beyond the galactic rim. Patterns that suggest intelligence. Large-scale megastructures. Energy signatures that dwarf even the Void Choir Prime. There are other threats out there. Things we do not yet understand. The revelation sent cold fear through Thelnara's body. More threats? Worse than the Void Choir? Different, Yamada clarified. Not necessarily hostile, but vast, ancient, beyond our current understanding. Humanity has taken it upon ourselves to investigate these signals, to be watchers, guardians. We will patrol the spaces between galaxies, monitoring for threats before they reach populated space. Why would you do this? Someone asked from the back of the command center. Why take on this burden? Because someone has to, Chen said simply. And because we remember what it felt like to be helpless. To face extinction with no one coming to help. We will not let that happen to others if we can prevent it. This is our choice. Our purpose. Thelnara felt tears forming in her compound eyes. This was not the arrogance she had feared. This was sacrifice on a scale she could barely comprehend. Humanity was voluntarily taking on the role of silent protectors, asking nothing in return. When you leave, she said slowly, leave us something. Not weapons, not your most advanced technology, but knowledge, medical techniques, clean energy, things that will improve lives without creating dependency. Help us grow, please. Chen nodded. We have prepared data packages. Cures for 17 diseases that plague council species. Improved agricultural methods. Cleaner fusion reactor designs. Educational materials. Everything is calibrated to be just beyond your current capability, encouraging you to learn and adapt rather than simply copying. In 100 years, you will have integrated these gifts and made them your own. In 1,000 years, you may not need us at all. And in 10,000 years? Voss asked. Admiral Yamada smiled, and despite his aged features, it was a warm expression. In 10,000 years, perhaps you will be the ones who answer someone else's distress call. Perhaps you will be the terrifying saviors who appear when all hope is lost. That would make us very proud. The final preparations took 3 days. Human engineers installed the promised technology on key council worlds. Medical teams trained council doctors. Scientists exchanged information in sessions that often left the council representatives overwhelmed and exhilarated. On the 3rd day, Thelnara stood in the observation deck, watching the human fleet prepare to depart. Ambassador Chen stood beside her, the two of them sharing a moment of quiet companionship. I experienced your memories during integration, Thelnara said softly. I felt what your species went through. The suffering, the determination, the hope. I understand now why you are the way you are. And we experienced yours, Chen replied. The Council's long history, thousands of years of civilization, the pride of being the most advanced species in the galaxy. We understand why our arrival frightened you. We understand why you hesitate to trust us completely. Will you really come if we call again? Thelnara asked. Yes, Chen promised, always. Not because we want gratitude or power, but because that is what you do for your neighbors. You help, you protect, you stand beside them when darkness comes. Humanity learned this lesson the hard way. We will not forget it. The human fleet began to move, ships that bent space around them preparing to translate into whatever mysterious dimension allowed them to cross the galaxy in hours instead of years. One by one they vanished, returning to whatever hidden places humanity now called home. The last ship to leave was Admiral Yamada's flagship. Before it departed, a final message came through. High Arbiter Thelnara, Yamada's aged voice said, when we first arrived, you asked what we had become in 400 years. I will answer honestly. We became what we needed to be. We became survivors. We became protectors. We became proof that even the most broken species can heal itself and grow into something worthy. But we also became humble. We know what we are capable of, and it terrifies us. We could conquer this galaxy in a decade if we chose. But conquest is easy. Building is hard. We choose hard. We choose building. Remember that when you tell your children about the day humanity answered your call. The flagship vanished and the human fleet was gone. Thelnara stood in the observation deck for a long time, staring at the empty space where impossible ships had hung. Around her, the council began the work of rebuilding. Colonies needed restoration. Refugees needed homes. Traumatized populations needed healing, but they would survive. They would grow. They would learn, and somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, humanity watched over them, Silent guardians who had chosen mercy over dominance, protection over power. The universe would never forget the day the Galactic Council called for help, and something terrifying answered. Something that could have destroyed them but chose instead to save them. Something that rewrote reality itself to prevent extinction. They had called for help, and humanity had come, not for glory, not for conquest, but because when the darkness came, someone needed to stand in its way and say, "No further." That was what humanity had become. That was what they chose to be. And the universe, vast and dangerous and full of unknown terrors, was a little bit safer because of it.